All right, so of all the different ways we can make our sketch into clean lines, right? It's going to have to do with building those lines ourselves. We are not going to try to automate it through any kind of AI process. Remember, AI is not what we're about. We're about understanding how to make the images and control them. So how do we get clean line art? We start with our sketch, the one we posted, and then we're going to open that sketch in Adobe Illustrator, the AI. We're not even going to bring it into Photoshop, right? Though we could bring it into Photoshop to clean it up, to stretch it, even to composite our sketch if we wanted. So we're returning to Illustrator where we last made our personal political symbols. What's the first thing we do? We click it, and then we go to Layers. We double click on the layer to open up its options, and we're going to dim it. We're going to onion skin it, and we're going to onion skin it maybe to, let's try 30%. There we go. So we have a nice, just like a light table, we have a nice kind of image of what we want, but we get to choose what lines are best from there. Now I'm going to take my tablet. I'm going to turn on my FaceTime camera so you can see the tablet, because the tablet matters here. And I just am using a cheap $60 Wacom Intuos tablet. But this is the beauty of it. We're going to lock that sketch layer, and we're going to make a new organizational layer on top, which will contain in red all of our vectors. And instead of using shape tools, to make vector shapes, instead of using the pen tool, which, graphic designers would use to make our paths and our lines. We can certainly do all that, right? But we are not trying to make clean vector shapes. We are trying to make line art. So we're not doing that. And most importantly, we're not doing this. We are not making strokes. We are going to make fill paths that match what an ink line is. So that looks decent, but because it's a stroke, I don't have full control. The vector path is actually in the middle of it, right? And so when it gets to the corner, I can't do anything about that edge, really, because I can't control how that one path expresses its outline. So what's a better way? It's a new tool. I'm going to lock this. Well, here, I'll just lock this one and turn it off so we can compare later. A better way is to use the brush, but not the paintbrush tool. The paintbrush tool is a stroke tool, so we don't want that. Instead, we want what's called the Blob brush. The Blob brush is an amazing simulator of an inking brush. If we double click on it, just like when we used the pencil before, we can set it to be more smooth or more accurate. I like that setting right there. And based on the size of our sketch, because it's a vector, we get to set the point size of our brush, just like if it was a brush in Photoshop. We can make it pressure sensitive, which you should because we're using a tablet for that purpose. And we can set the variation on it. So if I do a brush that's 30 points large, this is how you measure like vector type, then I also want the variation to be within 30 points. So I have a brush that's a little bit bigger than my lines, and I'm going to set that brush to be a fill that's black with no stroke. And now when I use it, it's like a blob of ink. That every time I use it, it's going to blend with the ink lines I've already put down, like it's a puddle, or as Illustrator calls it, a blob. If I hold down Command, I can show you. That's all one vector. And as I paint the bottom here, it doesn't make a new vector path. Instead, it combines it all into one. Now, the harder I press, the smaller the line, so I can fill in little gaps, just like you would with inking, right? And I'm not going to try to be perfectionist about it. But I can take what I've learned from this first round, just like inkers will choose the right pens or the right brushes, and I'll decide, okay, I want it a little cleaner than that, so let me tighten up my settings. Double click on my brush. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, maybe around 17 points. Yeah, I kind of like that line weight. Okay, and now I can tackle it again. Because I want it to be a little bit more expressive, like a tattoo artist, not really clean like a logo. Now, a lot of you have done illustrations before, but you've mostly done them in raster programs like Procreate, Paint Tool Sci, Photoshop. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that when you do it, you are based in pixels, right? And so you have to set it at a certain resolution. Bless you. And that resolution limits you. Whereas when you do it as a blob brush, as a vector, the resolution does not limit you at all. And you always get perfectly clean line art, which is perfect for commercial use. Okay, so that's done. Notice, just like with a regular ink pen or brush, I've overlapped a little bit and I've gotten little blobs, but that can be corrected with the pencil tool later. So now let's move on. Other advantages of doing this with an Illustrator, besides it being perfectly clean, is you can do duplicates, right? So I can make this oval, right? And I like that. I like that clarity. And now I can hold down Command, get a selection tool, copy it and paste it, move it, and rotate it, stretch it, and carry that same line quality, copy it, paste it throughout my illustration. Because Art Deco in particular, the style I'm playing with, is all about repeated shapes, but not necessarily a strong regularity. Right? So a lot of these ovals, instead of having to try to ink it each time and get that perfect gesture, I just get it once and then I can internally composite it and extend it. Because I've got a lot of shapes here, a lot of outlining. The more inking you do, the easier your coloring will be. The less inking you do, the more you're going to rely on the coloring behind the inking to make it interesting. And just like all of our assignments, we're trying to make something that engages the viewer. Turns it into an art. So this is the Blob brush tool in Adobe Illustrator. These videos are usually the most popular on our YouTube channel because people just outside of the class don't often know of the advantages of this technique. And then those people in the class, even when they leave the class, often come back to these videos to remind themselves how to use this tool because it's so helpful professionally. And it's kind of in between a logo, right, and usual drawing. It cleans it up for you. It has that nice smooth function. But it also still carries the personality of the mark, which vector shapes and pen tools usually obliterate. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Our goal today is to try to get all of our line art finished so that next class we can just focus on the coloring. Now you can also use, for some of you, especially if you're trying to imitate kind of an animation look, you can use the blob brush to imitate a technical line. I'm not going for that here. I'm going for a slightly more gestural line where I go thick to thin. But you can also set it where you limit the size to one width. So I could say I want it to be 10 and I want to take the variation all the way down and not make it pressure sensitive, make it a fixed technical pin, which means it can only draw at that thickness no matter how hard you press. Right. Which can also be helpful. And if you mess up, remember, just Command Z on the Mac. So I might make use of a technical line a little bit. We'll see. But let's go back to what my settings were because I liked them. 17 pixel points. It's just based on the size of your sketch. Setting it to pressure sensitive and setting it to the full variation, which means if I touch really lightly, it will barely make a mark, right? And if I really push, it will fill it up. And each of these circles is its own vector path, right? So I can always select them individually. I can always modify them, duplicate them, which is kind of perfect for our deco with these repetitive patterns. But there's a lot of them. This is a pretty detailed design I've made for myself, so I just keep working with it. Whoops. Okay, I think that's all the internal circles. Now I can do the external circles because these are fill paths, right? Which means they have an inner edge and an outer edge. So I don't need to spend a lot of time with the Pathfinder kind of cutting things out. But I want to figure out what my exterior circle is going to look like. And this to me feels maybe a little thick. So what other tool besides the blob brush, because this is going to do most of my line art for me, this blob brush. And if I feel it needs to be smoother, I can set it to be smoother. See how that kind of smooths things out. What other tool is helpful? Well, it's my favorite tool, the pencil tool. And again, you can set the pencil tool to be more smooth or more accurate. And here, I'm going to use the small selection tool, right? The blob brush creates a ton of anchor points, so it's not good for really, really clean logo design, but it's great for line art, just like an ink brush. And now with the pencil tool, once I see the anchors, I can redraw them. So if I want to smooth this out, make it a little bit narrower, I just start on the path and end on the path. Hold down Command to get to the small selection tool. I'm just going to taper this. I can also use the smooth tool if I ever need to. Make it a little bit more oblong.